Hey guys, I'm so excited for you to be here at the Healthy Hustle podcast. My name is Rachel Feldman. I'm here with a man who you have to know, who does imperative, essential work for coaches and really is an advocate for those of us in the health and wellness industry. Jonathan, can you introduce yourself? Tell everyone about you so that we can set the stage for how amazing this interview is going to be.
Thank you very much, Rachel. So my name is Jonathan Posey. I am the founder and executive director for the Council of Holistic Health Educators, which is the nation's only nonprofit advocacy association dedicating to protecting, defending, and fighting to advance the rights of holistic practitioners, schools, and stakeholders. We've been around, I think, since the beginning of January 2017. And so far, we've flipped 3 states into the green column, and we're continuing to push and fight for more, most recently in Florida. And I'm so very happy to be here.
Well, I'm not only thrilled, but even before we were recording, I was telling you just how amazing my education was at the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. Amazing my education was at different detox schools thereafter. And at the same time, I know for people like myself who know it's not only their passion, it's their purpose. We've gone through our own story. We want to save the pain of our ideal client. And yet we come out of school and say, what am I allowed to say? What am I allowed to do? And it can sometimes halt people right in their business. And I hear a lot of this, not only from my own experience in going through trying to figure out these laws, but I hear this from a lot of coaches. So it would be amazing if you can explain a little of what we hear these laws, this green, this red, this yellow, this orange. Maybe we'll even add a purple in one day. But
no, please don't.
A little of this. What
I hate the colors.
Means. Yeah, what this actually
means. I hate the colors. First, I want to say that the Institute for Integrative Nutrition has been one of our strongest supporters. Their director of advocacy, Daryl Rogers, has been both a tremendous supporter of me. He was the first person to say, we're in, we're going to support you. I love this. But he's also been an incredible mentor for me, both in just understanding this industry better, making connections, and helping the council to grow. I think they were one of the first three schools to join the council. And so I'm so incredibly grateful to IIN and for all of their very, very generous and kind support, not just with grants, but also with their expertise in helping us. The colors, gosh, I really don't like the colors. The colors started out as an indicator for those with a master's or PhD level education that received the Certified Nutrition Specialist credential. Green meant no laws, yellow meant there were title protection laws, and red meant that there was an exclusive scope of practice law, meaning that only someone who was licensed could use exclusive practices in terms of nutrition intervention. And orange is kind of a hybrid between yellow and red. And orange, I think, means there might be a little pathway, like Illinois, where the Board for Certification in Nutrition Specialists is located, a little 2-room office in South Chicago. They're an orange state, even though their director is on the board of dietetics and there's a really long, crazy pathway. Basically, these colors don't mean anything for us. They're not applying to us. And as much as the ANA, as they are now called, the American Nutrition Association, as much as they try to revamp them to apply to more people, they still really don't apply to holistic. So when we started the council, the first thing we wanted to do was tackle those gosh darn stoplight states and try to develop a way of conveying the law in an easy to read, not want to say layman's, but an everyday person's, plain language from a can-do perspective. Mm-hmm. And that's been very successful in terms of the can-do. And that is kind of the way we first got everything started for the council.
Do you find that, and I mean, there are a few questions, of course, that come to mind, but I would say, do you find, and you and I were talking about this before we started recording, do you find that even with your work, and I know because I have followed it, I've seen the progress. I've seen more coaches having a clear understanding. And what you and I were also speaking about is that not every school educates us, and it's not a blame, or it's not a blame game. It's just not everyone knows to educate this, and that some coaches either go through school and they're so passionate, they're so excited that maybe they look over that area, even if it is covered. And so what would you say is one of the biggest problems that you see right now in this industry for coaches to know how they should protect themselves? I think is the biggest one.
Well, I think the first thing is that the holistic health community is made up of extremely passionate people with one goal in mind: help everyone else, help people to live, eat, and feel better. I don't think anyone gets into holistic health for the money. They get into it because they have a passion. Either they've healed themselves and they want to share that, or they just really want to help people with tangible benefits. Now, I want to say just kind of at the top, unlike my very dear friend Lisa Fraley, I am not an attorney. I thought about it, but ultimately I couldn't afford law school. But that just simply means that I am not licensed to diagnose, treat, or cure a legal condition. So everything I say here is education, it's informational, it's based on my 15 plus years of working in Washington, D.C., on Capitol Hill and Congress, and just working on this issue. So with that kind of up front, we have this amazing community of very passionate people, but we also have a very significant multi-million-dollar opposition. And it's not the doctors. Doctors actually like us very much. It is really the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. That is the trade association for registered dietitians. And I've never met, at least someone who hasn't, I've never met a mean dietitian. I've never met a bad dietitian. They are absolutely wonderful people. But the people who are serving on the boards of dietetics and who work for the academy, they're the mean ones. And to give you a quick example, in New Jersey, they tried to create a license requirement for nutrition. And they tried to nail us to the cross and prevent us from working on anything. It took us 2 years, but we ground them to a halt and forced them to give us everything we wanted, basically. But I remember in the first meeting, I was up in Trenton. We had staff for the legislation sponsor. We had the Dietetics Board of New Jersey, or the Dietetics, the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics from New Jersey's people there. We had their lobbyists. And on the phone, we had the Director of Advocacy for the National Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics. And I was pressing him really hard. And I was saying, Mr. Tuma, please, has there ever been a case of actual harm in the state of New Jersey from the unlicensed practice of nutrition and wellness? And I kept pressing him, and he finally just erupted at me. He just says, "You want people to die." And I was so flabbergasted. I had that quote in his picture printed on a mug and gave it out to some colleagues of mine, because it's a great reminder of who we're up against. And we're not up against healthcare. That's the important part. We're not up against healthcare. We're not up against a public policy issue. We are up against a trade association that depends on people renewing their RD credential, paying that money so that they can stay alive. And the only way that they can keep the money coming in, because survival is the number one goal of any organization, is to push for these licensure laws in states that give the RD holder an exclusive right, an exclusive market share. And so what I hear time and again is that the dietetics boards and their representatives will stand up in front of a legislative committee and they'll say, you cannot change this law. You will create a public health crisis. And then when you sue them and you get them on the record and you get them in a deposition, they say they actually agree there's never been a case of actual harm anywhere in the state from the unlicensed practice of nutrition and wellness. And so really it's about money. It's about market share and money. And I think that's really the big thing that people need to understand, is that we're a passionate community. We have just out of the 80, 90,000 practitioners within the council, we have amazing education and knowledge and training, but we're up against people who are fighting for their very monetary survival. I mean, it's like, we just flipped the state of Florida in March. In the middle of a pandemic, we got the law changed in Florida. And I remember watching the debate. Our champion, Representative Blaise Ngolia, was debating one of his colleagues on the floor of the House of Representatives there. And his staffer handed him a piece of paper that I recognized on camera as my talking points. And he looks at it, he goes, well, what can you say to this, that there are 5,000 licensed dietitians in the state of Florida for 25 million people? How can you possibly see to all of their needs? You know, and not everyone needs nutrition intervention. Not everyone needs to see a doctor. I often tell the story about how the council really came about. And that was because I was dating a nutritional therapy practitioner. And she's brilliant. We started dating and she started opening my eyes to healthy eating. And usually you start dating someone, you get in a relation, gain weight. I lost 50 pounds. And I see the great work we do, but at the time we were living in Atlanta and she couldn't practice because the law was like, no, you can't do this. And, you know, if I could speak casually for a moment, that just pissed me off.
Yeah.
You know, we have the education and training. We have the passion to help people. There is a desperate need for for the hand holder, the peer mentor, the person who's going to sit there with you and teach you how to read a nutrition label, teach you how to understand recipes, how to mix foods and create things that you like, and really just be there for you. You know, doctors, dietitians, they don't have time for that.
Well, and I think that's the part that you and I were talking about even before we started recording, is that when I look at the role of a coach, it doesn't matter where you've come from school, because just like you in the council, we sell programs to people who are functional medicine practitioners or they're life coaches or they're health coaches in all different places. At the end of the day, what I always say is it's not that we aren't saying don't go to this dietitian or this doctor or this specialist. It's that in the system that we are in and have been in for many years, we are really in a place where it's only failing because, I mean, we can go into a whole nother, but where I see it failing is nobody has the time. The doctors that I went to years ago, nobody has the time to run that kind of practice. Otherwise, it's called VIP concierge. And that a lot of what coaches believe in, which is those habits that we change in our life. We talk about the roadblocks that actually get us to do the things that we know we all are supposed to do, which I think is the human psychology, the human condition. Yes. That is our biggest problem, is it's not just the traditional one size fits all. And that was what actually, that's what made me want to become a coach, is that through all my health diagnosis, misdiagnosis, and all of the amazing people, nurses, doctors, internists, different specialists, nutritionists, who were part of the picture, there still needed to be somebody that could hold me accountable daily. That would be a phone call away, or now a Voxer away, because in the human condition of our 24 hours is where we get stuck. And that's why I love that you advocate. And we're not saying that you shouldn't go see other people. It's that coaches are that missing piece, just like we would go to the gym and hire a trainer to hold us accountable.
It's my ideal world is that there is a practice with a medical doctor that oversees a registered dietitian and a health coach and maybe a nutritional therapy practitioner and a neurologist. And they work as a team. The doctor helps to diagnose and along with the dietitian creates the plan. And then the holistic nutritionist or the NTP or the health coach then actually is the one that takes over and does the substantive work to get it done. And I think there's enough business out there. There's enough people out. The Lord knows there's enough diseases out there just right now that this can work. But we're always demonized. And there's a great video I encourage everyone to go find. You can find it, I think, you should be able to find it on our Nourish the Roots Facebook advocacy community or the Council of Holistic Health Educators Facebook page. And it's called The Disruptors. It is a little video that was put out by the former president of the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics, Lucille Bessler. And in a wonderful Rhoda, New Jersey accent, she says that we have to be on the lookout for disruptors. And what's flashing on the screen is health coach, attempting to disrupt the way we do business. Because for them, it's about business, it's money, it's market. And that is really what we're up against. And so that's really what came about with the council, is that for years and years and years, we were seeing these states eroding our rights and the threats coming up, and there wasn't anyone fighting for us. You know, bless the folks over at BCNS. At the time, they were run by a really wonderful person named Judy Stone. She tried to fight for us. She did stand up for us when she could, but you know, our goals don't align up all that well. And so when we look at everything, we just thought, gosh, you know, Judy's a great person and she's done a lot of great work for us, but we've grown so much that we need our own. We need our own organization. We need our own advocates. We need our own community. Yeah. And that's how we came about. And it's been very good. And we start seeing other things popping up. So for example, we just brought in two really wonderful stakeholders into the council, the Holistic Entrepreneur Association, which is run by a nutritional therapy practitioner. And it's to bring folks together, practitioners together, to help them work on the business side of things. We just brought in a little company called Sophia Health, which is a brand new company that has an online cloud platform to help practitioners to schedule and bill and help clients to find them and to just really manage their practice. It's the first for-profit organization that we allowed into the council, and we allowed them in because part of Sophia Health's platform is that the health coach can input progress and outcomes, and that progress and outcomes can be anonymized and provided to us on the advocacy side. So when I go in and talk to a legislator, I can say, we have a trade association, the council, we have business associations, we have companies who are behind us, we have actual outcomes where I can show you 10 clients over 10 months, here's their progress, here's the weight loss going down, you know, all these little things. The more we can bring all that together and the more we can build that up, the stronger we will be, and I think the better we're going to be for the long term.
And I think even furthermore, something that you and I were talking about before is this lack of information of what we can do, or how do we actually practice. And when I was creating my programs, knowing that I had moved from Philadelphia, a green state, to Florida, I don't think we even need to go into detail, and really shocked, and not just shocked, but what I hear many coaches, either sad or frustrated or in paralysis, because I would say most people I know, as we've even talked about in this, it's not this one dietitian or nutritionist. I think that's where often the message gets misunderstood. It's that, similar to you, I have this vision of all of us working together, because that's how we have to in order to really serve the person. And when I was creating my content, I always said, if I have to speak from the I perspective, if I'm here, what is my mission? And really what was the reason I became a coach? It was to lessen the pain of somebody like myself spending hundreds of thousands of dollars in time and money with frustration. And so if I developed content to educate, to not diagnose, to share my personal story, to be there and work into team collaborations, if it was moving outside of my scope, really say, here, take this client. It's out of my scope, you know, and take the best care, and then I can support them on those habits of actually doing the good things in their life, so they don't end up, you know, in stress all day, all night, and then it doesn't work anyway. And so I know that a lot of coaches struggle in what can they actually do? So I thought that, I have my own experience of how I learned to speak from an I perspective and really share my experience, and not just inspire and not just sit there and say, oh yeah, you can have this, but to give people the education, very similar to when I didn't know what to do in the infancy of pregnancy. My doula, my acupuncturist, my internist, my doctor, my midwife said, here's this book. Read Avilva Joel Rahm's book on this. And that was the gift of education. And I feel, and I know that if we look at our business like this without fear, and that we can still coach, which is why we have you, and we'd love to even dive into some of these topics that come up constantly. Like, what can I give my clients in one-on-one sessions and groups?
It actually depends on the state that you're located in. So if we'll talk about the colors a little bit, even though I loathe them, because that's unfortunately kind of what the community has fixated on, so to speak. And it's tough to unlearn that, because it is so very helpful. I keep thinking one day we're going to create our own colors, but they kind of took all the good ones. And I really don't want to have neon green and fuchsia and crimson or something as things. Generally speaking, what you were able to do in every single state is provide education and guidance for food, nutrition, diet, and wellness and lifestyle. You can provide always the generally available information. If we just go over to Barnes & Noble, it's practically 3 rows of self-help and diet books. It is just pick up a keto book and it's going to talk about all kinds of diseases and things. So what you're able to provide at its most basic level is that if it's publicly available and it can be found in a book, journal, blog, YouTube video, course book, educational material, government study, it's deemed to be considered applicable to everyone. It is public information, and you can provide that completely free and clear. Where it gets tricky is that in those 16 states, when we started, there were 21, now there's only 16 left. You can't do the one-on-one. So for example, if you were my client in Ohio, or let's pick a better one because Ohio is a horrible state. Illinois, for practice, Illinois, if we were in the state of Illinois and you came to me and said, Jonathan, I just had a baby, I need to lose the extra 15 pounds that I gained. What can you do to help me kind of figure that out? I've never been really good with cooking. I just bought an air fryer, for example. What I could do is I could provide you with all of the education that helps you to learn what is food, how to cook, what are recipes, how to read nutrition labels. I can be the person who holds you accountable. And I can call you twice a week. We can go walk through a grocery store together and we can talk about labels. We can look at what the information on the nutrition label means. I can come and teach you how to cook basic recipes. But what I cannot do is individualize those services. Meaning, if you say to me, I love garlic, give me recipes about garlic. I can't write you recipes including garlic. I have to go to a book or some other public reference and say, I found these recipes for you that are big on garlic. Here you go. I can't tell you that, I recommend that you go get this lab test. I can only educate you about the lab tests and what they are and what they do. And then I can suggest, if you want to know more, you should speak to your doctor, but also if you're interested, here are some laboratories that you can contact that will provide you with the test and help you see the results. And it's tricky sometimes that if you get those results and you bring them back to me, I, as the practitioner, have to be super careful that I speak generally about the information. I cannot say, oh, there's vitamin D. You have a vitamin D deficiency. You need to take some vitamin D. It would be more along the lines of, I see that you have a vitamin D deficiency here. Here's the education and information of what that means and how to fix it.
I love that you said that, because I think of all my clients, it's not uncommon with autoimmune, or as you and I discussed, person who's in an office, high-powered CO, in 40-hour plus weeks to have a vitamin deficiency. And I would always say, here's the work of Mercola. here's the work of Chris Kressler. And I would literally put in an email all the links and say, it would be great for your benefit to include your doctor on this so that they can dive deeper into what you can do for this exact. I know per the work of Terry Walls that it would be
Love Terry.
behoove you to have good vitamin D because of this work. And I would snapshot that part of the documentation and send that to my clients.
Having the doctor involved is paramount. We just got, as I said, we just flipped the law of Florida. And as much as I tried to write an exemption that was applicable and would give us the broadest authority possible, unfortunately, at the very end, the Florida Academy of Dietetics, who were they were caught flat-footed. They didn't even get involved until the train had already left the station, because they honestly probably didn't believe that we were ever going to be able to.
We're going to do it. Yeah.
Because they defeated us every year and they kind of dismissed us every year. But they got this section put into the law that it just reads terribly. But it says that, you're exempt from the dietetics licensure law, but you may not work with a person who is, quote, under the direct care and supervision of a medical doctor for a disease or medical condition requiring nutrition intervention. Very weird wording. First, doctors don't supervise patients, they supervise nurses. And I don't know why they put that word in there. It's very confusing. So we just shorten it to under direct care. So we have to understand what is direct care. If you see a doctor 2 years ago and he says, John, buddy, you're on the borderline of obesity, you gotta lose weight. I'm gonna write you a prescription for some blood pressure medication. What if I throw away that prescription, never take it, even though I've just been diagnosed and prescribed a prescription? Can I then work with a health coach 2 years later? Of course. Our assessment of this is that you can work with someone in Florida, totally fine, one-on-one, unless they are under the direct, continuing care of a medical doctor for a prescribed and diagnosed disease or medical condition in which the doctor has prescribed nutrition intervention. Just because someone saw a doctor does not immediately exclude you. But let's look at that from another direction. If you're in the state of Ohio and a client comes to see you, you are forbidden to ask them even what diseases they may have or their family history, or, even if they ever, who is their doctor? These are questions that you cannot ask them. And it's really kind of asinine because from a safety perspective, that's paramount. Yeah. So the way that we wrote the exemption and the way we kind of snuck it under their noses in Florida is that because it says you cannot work with someone who's under the direct care of a medical doctor, that means you have to ask them, are you presently under the care of a medical doctor for a diagnosed disease or medical condition? Are you on any kind of medications? If you're on a medication, that means you've been prescribed a medication. Mm-hmm. So you must have been diagnosed for something. Now, even if you get all that, you then also have to ask your client for the name of their medical doctor and get permission to contact. Because then I want you to call that medical doctor, that physician, and say, hi, Dr. Rachel, my name's Jonathan Posey. I'm a health coach. I just had one of your patients come in and I would really love to work with them, but I need to get a prescription from you for this. Would you be willing to write a prescription for health coaching, for example? Can I consult with you? Can we work together?
That is exactly. I love that you're giving such clear verbiage, because when you and I first started talking about this, we've known about these colors. I mean, I've known about it for, I would say, 8 years of the 10 that I've been a coach. And yet this practical verbiage is what I try to explain to coaches. Mm-hmm. Yet I don't have the understanding of the laws in the way that you do. The verbiage you just said, and I think of, I attracted a lot of clients like myself, a lot of mystery illness, a lot of they're seeing multiple people. And I can't tell you how many calls I had to either the Mayo Clinic, the head top person at University of Miami, all these different big wig kind of places. And I would say that same verbiage. This person has contacted me. I would like to tell you exactly what I do and see if it would be okay. to
Get a
support the
prescription.
person on stress levels and to
Yeah.
support what you're doing, in addition for me to send to you what we are doing weekly. I would say to my client, can you please speak with your doctor? Let them know so that we can have this amazing integrative approach of supporting people.
Yes. And there's also the fact that not everyone requires nutrition intervention, which,
Yeah.
by the way, is not defined in the law. That's really funny, is nutrition and intervention are not defined in the law. So that's really how it gave us the power to be able to really define it for ourselves in a very safe way. But oftentimes, I know in my case, Kelly needed to give me nutrition intervention as my holistic practitioner and girlfriend at the time. But it was because there were behavioral and social and maybe environmental issues that were holding me back.
I love that you said that in such an eloquent way, because I will often say it's their life, it's their habits, it's
cheeseburger macaroni, hamburger helper. I love it. I used to eat it all the time in college, but all it is you brown some beef, put some milk, water, and a packet of yellow or orange powder, and you have a meal. That's not a meal. It's a highly processed, horribly bad for me meal. But that's kind of the things I were eating back then. And Kelly taught me how to cook. She gave me the confidence that I should just try out a recipe.
Yeah.
We look at a recipe sometimes and we think, gosh, it's just going to take a long time. I'm hungry now. As humans, we choose the path of least resistance.
Well, and we have to rewire our habits. And that's what you and I were talking about even before we started recording, is that's the human condition. That's the reason that we are in such dysbiosis of the mind, of the body, of our spirit, is we're pulled in 80 different directions. And of course we go back to our bad habits, myself included. And then I have to coach myself. One thing I want to address even before we go on, because similar to you, I play devil's advocate. I hear these coaches who
come at me, bro.
Yeah, contact me and say, but I'm in, and I even had a coach 2 weeks ago, but I'm in Ohio. And I always say, you can't personalize it. You educate.
Yeah.
So for this example, let's take and say this coach hypothetically she does work with weight loss.
Mm-hmm.
Her story is she did do the ketogenic diet. She lost 165 pounds.
Wow.
She changed everything about her life. She has come from a lineage where, and we know this is not uncommon. She's a woman that in her makeup of where she comes from, that it's not uncommon that diabetes will destroy that family, the lineage, and it's been passed down. So she does have a mom and a dad that have both lost limbs. She got to a point where she said, it's enough. I'm watching my children. So she said to me, what am I permitted to do? And I said to her, you can, in a course format, educate. And I told her the things, but I would love to hear from you. Is she permitted to share her story? Is she permitted in that group coaching format, not personalization, to talk about ketogenic, to talk about her weight?
What is a group? A group is speaking in public or even in private to more than one person. So by definition, it's not individualized. And it actually really comes down to your freedom of speech. You can stand up at Whole Foods or Natural Grocers, and because Natural Grocers really does this a lot. They have these education classes for nutrition, and they bring in health coaches. You can get up and talk to a broad group of folks. There's the Restart program for nutritional therapy practitioners that is for groups. That's your freedom of speech. As long as what you're saying is applicable to everyone, is fine. The concern is when you get to be one-on-one. And even then, like I said, you have to just change the way you're talking.
Yeah.
But you can absolutely talk to groups. And a great story, if I may.
Yeah, please.
A couple of years ago, I was sitting at lunch here in Northern Virginia, and I got a call from one of our schools who said that they have a practitioner. She's in Kansas. She's working with Garmin. She's doing group health coaching at Garmin. And the spouse of one of the employees in the audience is a dietitian. And that person reported the coach or the holistic practitioner to the state's Board of Dietetics. And an investigator called up and said, we have a complaint, and tried to corner her and get her to admit that she was practicing dietetics without a license. And so she did exactly as she was taught to do in one of our webinars. She said, thank you very much for informing me. Let me get your name and information. Please send me this in writing and I will be in touch. She hung up the phone. She called her school first, and then she called me. And what I did was I immediately reached out to our sister organization, the Institute for Justice, who is suing the state of Florida, by the way, on behalf of a health coach. And IJ was able to connect her with a pro bono attorney who was able to step in and say, you know what, this is bupkis. This is complete crap. We're going to respond in a way that just says, thank you very much for letting us know, but here's the reason why we are not violating the law. And she never heard another word. And that happens a lot, because the investigators work for the state technically, and they're bound to investigate things that come up. But as I said, we've got the deck loaded against us. I think the Academy of Nutrition and Dietetics still offers a bounty for registered dietitians reporting unlicensed practitioners. And I just think that's really terrible. I remember when I first started this, I had a colleague of mine. I said, why don't we just go down to the A&D and talk to them? Let's find a way and make a plan for us all to work together. And he'd been working in this field for years. And he says, oh, Jonathan, you're so sweet, so innocent. That's never going to happen. And I thought, well, you're just pedantic. Come on. I thought in my mind, surely there's a way. But no, as I've learned over these 3.5 years, no, they do not want us around. They do not want that competition.
I think the one thing I try to tell coaches all the time, and I know this is psychology as well, and yet this is also learning how to not be a threat when you are speaking about either your services. And the second point that I always try, whether I see somebody on a group or I'm speaking to a coach one-on-one about what I know that I did successfully in my business, is that I didn't ever shame other people. And I think that from coming from, and that's why I always say to coaches, like, depersonalize from this business. Because if you don't, your own frustration at the machine, not just the system, the machine will always blanket different opportunities that can actually come to you in your business. And so just to learn to not say, don't go to this person, but for us to open up the avenue of, just like we're saying, this integrative approach where everyone is working with each other.
And as you said before, the question that you had is, can I talk about myself? Of course you can. You can talk about what brought you to the profession. Why did you undertake this education and training at a significant cost? Is because in Kelly's case, I think she had Hashimoto's. And she had a lot of issues that she wanted to tackle on her own. And she also wanted to help other people. And so she chose the program with that in mind. And with her clients, she would just tell them, yeah, these are the problems that I solved, not cured, but solved for myself. And I realized this was something I wanted to do with my life. And you can absolutely say that.
And I love this example because I know coaches always say to me, so I heard this amazing webinar. It was so helpful. And somebody just give me the language. And that's why I'm really just blown away, even in this. I wish this was back around when I was struggling. And that's why I'm extremely excited that we're doing this for coaches. I would say, let's dive into two more topics that I hear constantly. And that is, especially with the rise of functional medicine testing, mineral hair testing, a lot of this different testing. I would love to talk on two biggies, testing and supplements, and just give some verbiage, maybe even an example, and be really clear. What is a coach allowed to and not allowed? And just where do you see actually people making the mistake with this verbiage where they don't even think that they are doing something that could be possibly wrong, but they just find that passion to want to save somebody that pain sometimes overrides this logic and this knowledge of what we truly need to just move forward with knowing, and so that we are doing the right thing for our business. And then also, most importantly, paving the way for more expansion in what you do versus making it harder for you.
So one of the cool benefits of your school being a member of the council, we do this through the schools, and every school, a school provides us every year with a grant. And for that grant, at the council, we provide all of their prospective, current, and alumni students with one-on-one individualized support over policy and regulations and terms to practice. You can call us, you can email us, and we will work one-on-one with you. I will sit for 2 hours and walk through the law with you to get you comfortable with that. The number one thing where practitioners go wrong and health coaches go wrong, when I say practitioners, I mean everyone.
Everyone.
We're Switzerland at the council. We like everyone. We're everybody's holistic banker. But the first thing that really, I think, touches off a problem is using disease terms. So for example, whenever I get a practitioner on the phone and we're gonna talk about their practice, say, tell me about your practice. Oh, I just graduated from IIN 3 months ago, and I help people tackle and cure their diabetes. I cure their gut bacteria. I help them tackle and treat their IBS. And I have to say, okay, never use those words again. You have to stay away from disease terms or medical terms. And that's not just diabetes, or that's not just IBS, but it's also using words like order. You can't say order. You can't order treatment. You can't order therapy. You can't order a plan. You have to be very, very careful that.
Or order those tests.
Order those tests, yes. Which I'm going to talk about.
Yeah.
Because yesterday we just had the most mind-blowing call of the Florida Council of Dietetics on this issue. But you can't use the word patient. You can't use the word order. You can't use the word prescribe. That's the big thing that really catches people. I was just looking at a practitioner's website, which is another thing that we do. We'll review all of your marketing materials, and all of our services are free. Wow. If you are from one of our member schools. And so we do that just because it's a lot easier to say IIN is a member. Great. All 50,000 of their graduates can be helped. We don't have to do these individual type things. So that's the number one thing. I think the second thing that really trips up practitioners is what you're putting on your websites, the kind of things that you're saying. So for example, the practitioner who contacted me, she had on her website that she had all these disease terms listed out, like diabetes. And she just said, health diseases or nutrition diseases, and it listed them, but it had nothing else. So if you see that and you try to think, what would the average person of the public believe?
An assumption from seeing all these diseases.
Right. So I suggested that she needed to change that and to say explicitly, while I am not licensed as a healthcare practitioner, I can help you to understand and tackle the behavioral, environmental, social, religious, all of the spiritual, all of those things that help you stay away from those diseases. I can help you avoid them to be able to improve your overall
I can help you walk away from what your biggest fear is.
Correct. So with that in mind, when we look at laboratory testing, in Florida yesterday, there was this 3-hour long call of the Council of Dietetics, and apparently a registered dietitian who'd been practicing for a number of years in Florida, through really no fault of her own, was technically working without a license. She was in this period where she thought she had a certain amount of time to complete some continuing education courses, but her license was still valid. And so she was completely caught off guard when an undercover investigator called her up and said, "Can you help me work with my arthritis?" And the practitioner said, "You know what? I can absolutely help you with that. I specialize in inflammation and immunities affected by the food in the gut, and I'd be happy to work with you. Let me send you a list of lab tests that I recommend you getting. And it's from a lab that I've worked with in the past in Central Florida. They're very good. You take that test, you send it back to the lab sends you the results, and with that, we can begin working. She was hit with a $2,500 fine for not only practicing without a license for dietetics, but practicing medicine without a license. And the Council of Dietetics, I think, gave her a break on that. And I think the Board of Medicine will give her a break on that because she didn't order anything. She just simply said, here's a list of lab tests. You can go to, there's a great place in Atlanta, all over Atlanta, called Any Test Now. They have a whole lab course, a whole list of tests that you can walk off the street and get yourself. So she didn't order it. She just simply said, here are these lab tests. But I don't believe in coincidences. And so it was very curious that about 30 minutes after they, resolved her case, after publicly ripping her life apart, and it was a very humiliating experience for her, I think. But after ripping her life apart and concluding the case, they then moved into new proposed regulations for the Dietetics Council. And there's a regulation that says that a licensed dietitian may not order or handle or interpret or anything of human specimens or laboratory testing. Basically, they're forbidden. Well, on a vote of 4-0, they decided to just laugh and go ahead and remove that. So they literally just gave themselves the authority to do lab testing in Florida. That's not a coincidence. I think that is, we often see one state, one dietetics board try to do something like this, and it quickly gets replicated in the other states. And I think this is where they said, well, we really want we really want lab testing because it's important for our insurance reimbursement, and it's important for our businesses to grow. This is not about health. It's all about money. It's all about business. So they said that, yeah, let's just go ahead and remove that. So I move that we strike that regulation from now on. And on a 4-0 vote, they completely removed it. Then they moved to schedule a workshop in 3 months at their next meeting to talk about lab testing. And I will bet you donuts to cookies that when that workshop comes up, they're going to talk all about unlicensed professionals killing people with lab tests and diagnosing and treating and curing diseases with lab tests. And this should be an exclusive right for registered licensed dietitians. So, when I saw it, I thought, oh my gosh. I immediately sent out kind of an emotional alert to everyone we had in Florida, saying that, look, you really need to be mindful now of someone coming into your practice either by phone or in person and throwing around these disease terms. Our exemption in Florida explicitly excludes obesity and weight loss from the restrictions. So we can totally work with someone on obesity and weight loss, even if they've seen a doctor for it. Totally can work with them. But when that comes up, our practitioners need to be aware that lab testing is completely legal in 49 states in America. The only state where there's a hard and fast rule is New York. And New York says that only a licensed healthcare practitioner can order, receive, and interpret laboratory results. The other 49 states, it's really up to the client and the lab. Now, Oregon and California have released guidance that says that, okay, if you're not a licensed medical practitioner, either here are the lists of labs that you can request, or here are the type of conditions. Like, for example, California says you can't order a lab test for cancer markers. Duh, that's a disease. You can never do any type of lab testing for trying to diagnose a disease. Never. So I tell folks, when you get a call like that, or if you have someone who says, can you help me with my arthritis? You got to say, hey, thank you very much for contacting me. I would love to work with you, but gosh, I'm not licensed by the state of Florida as a medical provider. So that means I'm not allowed to diagnose, treat, or cure a disease or medical condition. However, you can certainly explore how the food you eat affects your physiology, how they have an impact on those conditions and what leads to them. And more importantly, how physical, emotional, nutritional, environmental, and spiritual understanding and education can help you avoid those. So it's always about what we're saying. It's rarely about what we're doing. When it comes to laboratory tests, when they say, should I get lab tests for that? Because it's coming. I can already hear the undercover investigator saying it. You can say, look, well, anyone can get a laboratory test on their own, and I'm happy to provide you with a list of reputable labs that I work with that are great labs. Again, it would be considered the practice of medicine if I were to order a lab test for you. And I can totally provide you with the education and recommendations for the lab tests.
And or books and or,
yes,
different
yes.
places. Yep.
I was just talking with Reed Davis at Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. Wonderful man. They have a lab testing service, which is fantastic, because not only is that something that creates a closed loop for your clients, it's also done all with the client. The client has to contact the lab. They have to get the test tubes. They have to then get the results, and then they have to bring them to you separately. So those kind of things where you're saying, after you have received your results, I'm happy to review them with you and help explain and interpret what they mean.
Well, and I think this even adds to a point that I know every coach feels at every different growth or beginning stage of their business. It's that fear. What if I say this person isn't going to hire me? And one thing I say to coaches all the time is, they will hire you, and it will even feel better when you say with ease, listen, we can, I've gone through experience with 1, 2, 3. This is why I became a coach. What we do doesn't mean that we're diagnosing. And that kind of diagnosis needs to happen with your doctor or a person who can do that. I know plenty of different people who you can call. What we do here is to work on exactly what you just said, and to know in any further conversation, why don't I send you just my little formal, let's get on the same page agreement. And that's what I learned, to just say it in a way that fit my personality, my kind of let's get down to business, no BS approach kind of girl. And also to not make it feel like we're about to enter a marriage or go for a divorce. Because in health and wellness, that beginning conversation is one of trust. And you want to see that person's commitment level also. So I think that it's a practicing of that language that you had given. And for the coach to just get over this fear, because you are not only protecting yourself, but you're weaning out the people that don't really want to do that kind of work either, and may not be a great fit for you anyway.
Yeah, and if they and I encourage you where applicable. Ohio is probably the only place Ohio and Illinois, I'd say the only 2 places where you should really be careful about this. But I encourage you to find an opportunity to find out, does that person have a family physician? Are they on medication? Those 2 things I think are very important for us, because then I want you to call and confirm it. Get on the medical team. Get into the team.
Yeah.
You may not be invited to the team. The doctor may just say, yeah, that's great. Well, let me know if they need any help. And they hang up. Okay, fine. You've contacted the doctor. You've notified them what they're doing.
Send an email. Send
them. That's right. Send them reports.
Paper trail.
Send them reports. Yeah. Periodically, just send that doctor a report. Just let you know where I'm working with your patient.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's exactly that. When I talked about moving from a green state to a red, people always say, how did you coach? And well, I got through being fearful and upset. I contacted, as we discussed, I said, any business, you should always contact your health department anyway. Ask questions. Yeah. And at the same time, I said, you know what? Maybe this is meant to happen. And because of that, I built this huge referral network, not only locally, but with people I was working with who were, via Zoom, that really could help this client. And also that team collaboration is also my huge dream and fantasy that I build. So I call it the Carter dream. It's that there should be a place where there are all different people working in collaboration, because it takes a village these days to walk down the road of health. It's not just this one perspective. It takes a bunch of think tanks. It takes a lot of brainstorming. And what I always say to coaches is, it's like finding where's Waldo in that picture. Our job as coaches is to help somebody expand the mind and to see that there's all these different factors, and that it does take people working together for us to feel epic 24/7.
And it's the same thing with supplements. With dietary supplements, it is completely legal in every single state, no matter the dietetics law, to sell dietary supplements, to explain how they are made and how they're used, and to understand what they could be used for. The only thing is that you can never prescribe a dietary supplement, but if you are in a state that does not have a licensure requirement, you can recommend dietary supplements. So for example, in the state of Florida now, because you can do one-on-one individual practice, someone comes to you with that vitamin D, you can actually say, I recommend that you consider vitamin D, that you look into it, you talk to your doctor about it. The dietary supplement elements are really funny because pretty much every single state that has a dietetics law, and almost all of them do, has something in there, and I call it the GNC exemption, because it says that, you're exempt to explain, talk about how they're made, all this stuff on dietary supplements. And I can just see the lobbyists. I know the lobbyists for GNC, and I just know that this is something he would have advocated for. But in the other states, you can always be able to talk about them, so long as you're not using them for any kind of disease states.
I love that you bring that example, and I know we've already gone a good amount today on this one interview, and we didn't even touch the surface on so many other questions that people ask. But I know that the verbiage that you gave is verbiage that not only am I asked daily, weekly, emails, same thing with you on your end doing this kind of work. But I also know that these were my biggest fears, and that fear for us in our business, or what can I say, needs to be dismantled. One, so that we all do protect each other. Two, that we just know how to protect our business, and not just our livelihood, but the reason that we became, as we said, coaches or practitioners. I would love you to tell everyone where they can find you, how they can support the council, so that you can keep doing this really unbelievable work.
Thank you. I'll actually just want to say one more thing about layers of protection, because the first layer of protection is your intake forms and notification. Putting in there in the print that you are not licensed by your state to diagnose, treat, or cure a medical condition. Making sure that you're avoiding those medicalized words like disease, order, prescribed, cure, treat, etc. Those are the top two things, and that just not goes for your marketing, your website, but what you're saying. As long as you're doing those two things, and you're upfront with the client about what you can and cannot do, I think that is probably your best level of protection. Now, as far as the council, the number one thing that I would be very grateful for, besides donating, but that's, we're a nonprofit, so forgive me for saying that, but if your school is a member of the council, please reach out to them and tell them how much you appreciate that we are here. I know that they love to hear that, and I know that they don't always hear back from their graduates of what are they doing right. Each of these schools, and you can find all of them under members on our website at holisticouncil.org. Each one of them has made an investment in your future in advocacy. And I would be very grateful if you thank them. If your school is not a member of the council, I would be extremely grateful if you kindly and politely nudge them, because every school that joins, and it's a sliding scale, we work very hard to never be a burden. I don't want membership in the council to be a financial burden on any of our schools. Every school that we add, we bring in all of their alumni. And that is another chance to train them in advocacy, to help them understand, and maybe they gave up practicing 10 years ago.
Yeah, 100%.
Bring them back. Maybe help them to just really expand and explore their business, because not only that is I could then use those graduates as advocates. And of course, if you happen to find any spare change in the sofa, I would be immensely grateful if you'd go to holisticcouncil.org/donate over there. You can do it through PayPal or our website. And here's a great one. Reed Davis of Applied Functional Diagnostics Nutrition Professionals. He just told me that if you are a graduate of AFDNP and you donate, he will match it. So
I love Reed. I mean,
I want to give him a hug.
He is that guy that is so huggable. And I would say it's his story. I mean, he left his practice in New Jersey doing environmental cleanup with that same feeling that we all, why is this happening? Why are we seeing this nonstop, these sicknesses and all this stuff come around? And he was that person that said, I'm going to go into every health store. I'm going to open my mouth. I'm going to educate and educate. That's why his story, he always says, Rachel, you are so grassroots. You are in the same way. I said, well, I just opened up my mouth. Anyone that would let me speak, I educated. And I think a great example, and I say this to coaches all the time, when we hear Josh Axe, who many of us know.
Dr. Axe.
Love him, spoke to him
Yes.
actually 9 years ago in a Publix when I was shopping there about gut and how his story inspired me. And I always said, what I love about you is you educate. You tell people this may be the symptoms that you're struggling with. This is the information I know. I know that with good food, with good lifestyle, with taking out foods. And he does so eloquently. He teaches, he's not diagnosing. He talks about a problem, a comment, and then he dismantles how difficult it is to actually be healthy in this busy world.
It's an arm around the shoulder.
Yeah.
I visualize in my mind that the health coach, the practitioner is putting an arm around the shoulder of their client. And they're like, I'm going to be here for you. I'm going to help you because I am not just your practitioner. I am your friend in this. And we are on a mission together and I care.
Guys, I don't think I'm going to say anything more after that. And you know I never have a lack of words. But that was so beautifully said. Please, guys, if you know somebody who doesn't know where to start or they're confused about this area, please go visit the council.
The website has we had attorneys write on our website is every single state's dietetics law written in an easy to understand can-do wording. So visit, and if you're from one of our member schools and you need extra help, reach out and contact us no matter where you are in the world.
Yeah.
I don't speak French, I don't read French, but if you're in France, I will do what I can through Google Translate to understand the law there and at least give you a lot of positive direction.
Guys, so please don't stop your business, feel paralyzed. There's a way to coach, and clearly you have an advocate for you. So if you have any questions, guys, you will see in the show notes. You will also see information about Jonathan's work, and this is a one-stop shop website that really is here for us, here to make it easy for you so you can do not only what you love doing, but really what you're meant doing. If you have any questions, we'll see you guys soon, and please support the council and their work. Bye, guys.